posterity. All right, so it's 7:01. I think we might as well get started. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm very happy that you're here. Let me show my slides. Everyone can see them? Thumbs up, excellent. So ECS NJ, as you know, Episcopal Community Services of the Diocese of New Jersey. I'm Deacon Tricia Thorne. I'm the Executive Director.
Hi, Tricia.
I'm joined by
Donna.
Stapley, who's a superstar.
How are you?
On the Grants Committee.
Okay, how are you?
Are you feeling better?
And Meyer Pincelli is on our advisory
No.
council, and he's
We
also
should talk about
on
that
the
offline.
And I think we'll probably
Okay.
be joined by more folks as we go along. I know Ken and Sebastian.
Yeah, no,
are here, and
it's not good.
we've got some good representation.
Hey, Trish.
Hi,
I'm
Jane.
afraid it looks really fuzzy tonight. I don't know if I don't have a good connection, but I'm as close to my router as I can get. So we'll just
our ECS
count on prayer.
How it's a way
Yes,
to
I'm with
let
you.
know about changes to the ECS grant process in case
Yeah.
you've applied before or have us,
I'm just gonna line up everything
We
on
wanna
my
share
little
tips
windows
about
so I have
writing
it correct.
success, both in general and for ECS, right? Because we want you to be able to write good grants to lots of funders, not just to us. So, we kind of weaving that in. We'll talk about the requirements for ECS and then, of course, answer any questions.
I know I like to close as many windows as possible,
so
so
ideas and time permits,
my
we'll do that
computer
too.
doesn't
But we're building in some
have an
feedback
excuse
along the
to
plans of the process, as you'll hear.
do anything. We hope.
But just to get us started.
And somehow it's already recording, so it's great. It didn't count on me to push record, but I was not expecting it to start recording already.
Endow us with
Gosh,
the
sorry.
vision to balance charitable giving with advocating
Oh,
justice.
I look worse, but I got 9 miles in today.
Oh, good.
So I'll take the bad hair.
Yeah, good for you.
With you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So ECS was formed in 2020, which we were just talking about. It's as a diocesan initiative to support congregations as they proactively address human needs and relentlessly work against both social and racial injustice. This work invites us to walk with Christ together and make a positive impact in our communities, serving as a constant reminder of our interdependence and of our shared commitment. Our shared commitments to discipleship and the baptismal covenant. I like to say that at ECS, we're working to build a movement for gospel justice in the Diocese of New Jersey through education, advocacy, fundraising, grant making, and prayer. So in the grant making sphere, we give grants to churches in our diocese to support the development of new ministries, the expansion of existing ones that proactively address human needs and relentlessly work against both social and racial injustice. And we provide providing networking, advocacy, and community organizing support. So ECS in the
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Our collective
Perfect.
ability
Just
by raising
checking
funds
the
across the diocese.
testing the
Thank you so
audio.
much to everyone who's donated to
Yeah.
ECS. All of the money raised for this round of grants.
People are here, so everyone found the right link.
Parishioners, churches, and friends of the Diocese of New Jersey. At ECS, we network and make connections. We give grants where most needed. We advocate for change. I'm so glad that you're here to talk about grants tonight. It should be lots of fun. I always get very excited about it. Something that can kind of trip people up a little bit is they have a good sense of the service part of a grant, or
I'm not sure how many people to expect. I don't know how to peek behind the hood and see that. So
Talk a little bit about that. You can
diocesan staff is so busy. I didn't want to ask
really
them
great
to do
definition
it.
of advocacy that was passed in a resolution at General.
We'll
I'm pretty sure Deacon John Hanson is planning on attending.
Oh, how nice. I haven't seen him in a while. That's great.
It's our corporate public witness to the mission of God to restore all people to the unity of God and each other in Christ. Social justice is about right relationships among and between us, centering the voice and experience of the marginalized, as we read in Matthew 25. And these are the relationships that have been and continue to.
Hi, Meyer. And Meyer, would you keep an eye on the chat for us?
Unjust distribution of wealth, opportunity, and privilege.
He said, sure, I could tell.
Social justice ministry includes acts of mercy or
Did
charity,
anybody get a
but
strange
it
message
must
that this
also
was to be
include
canceled?
dismantling institutions,
You know what?
structures, and
Yes.
policies that cause
There
harm
was
and
an
divide
earlier,
us from each other.
Cannon
It
Jones
includes
set up the
repairing
session
the breach
originally.
by rebuilding systems
And
of
when,
justice, fairness,
And when they removed her from the diocesan Zoom system, it messed up our event. So we had to set up a
Oh,
new.
because I was very confused, and then I got the message the other day that there was, and then I was like, what? Okay.
I know.
I just want to make sure I wasn't totally screwy. It wasn't me. This
Nope.
time wasn't me.
Deacon Tricia, what do I do when I monitor the chat?
Oh, if someone has a question, just make sure to bring it up at a good point.
Oh,
You might want
Okay.
to search and document.
that helps.
Educate and
Okay.
train your volunteers to do this.
I can
work
figure I can do that maybe.
by teaching successful strategies
Yeah.
and kind of community organizing skills. You want to educate the community about the issues around them and also about the legislative process to address the issues. And then, what everyone thinks of as advocacy, you want to lobby decision makers for legislative and systemic change. Speaking in favor of a particular position, arguing for a cause, or pleading on behalf of others. I feel like this is actually our whole presentation. Like, this is the key
Yeah.
for success for an ECS grant. Like, this is what we want you to say in your proposal. We want you to tell us how your proposed program shows how you love God, shows how you love your neighbor, and shows how you're going to change.
All right, so I thought we'll start, around 7:01.
Actually, all you need to know.
Give people a chance
To
to
write.
finish their dinner
I'm
and
gonna butt in with
find
my,
us.
Go for
my
it.
grant.
Oh, I thought you were serving dinner.
That your
I know.
program can change
Nah.
the world. We want to see that you can do it.
Be kind of difficult.
Yep. All right, so.
I did one meeting once where they had delivery individually to everybody.
Are you kidding
For
me?
one thing, it's an
No.
annual.
Seriously?
It's supposed to do twice a year,
It
but
was
now we're doing
business
once a
people,
year, so
though,
it
you
is-
know?
it is
That's-
once a
I
year.
learned, I was in academia, but I learned the
And a
business
letter of
people
intent
eat
is
better, dress
required
better.
in April.
I feel you.
It's not a huge.
I was like-
Hi, Candace Sebastian.
Your entire
Yes,
program.
yes, we do,
have to say
but-
there are 3 things we want you to include in your letter. of
We've never had a
intent, and you
Zoom,
have to
but
read the
I've been
guidelines
many,
to
many
find
meetings
them.
that they bring in dinner
For any
because
grant
you're
applying for, you
at
should read the
5:15, you know?
And one of the things you have
But
to
I
say
think
in your
that's
letter of intent is
awfully,
that you read
that's
the
an
guidelines. So
an
go read the
accomplishment
guidelines and look at
to
the-
send everything to everybody who's on the
Have to say in
Zoom
your
call.
letter.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Okay, we've also.
We
changed the
aspire
grant
to
amount and
better
A
things.
challenge for next time,
We,
perhaps.
Yeah. how
Oh,
about
yeah.
I'm sure. Wait on that. Wait on that.
To help you develop your
In
program.
the summer of 2020, I worked at Princeton and I had 25 remote student interns. They were all like working from their home. And we did send them snack boxes and we had like a little snack time where we all talked about
Mhm.
the snacks that we were eating and how our week went and everything.
This gives us a chance to ask you.
But that was a different,
questions.
that was a different
We can
budget
Really like help you develop
than-
the best program possible.
than the ECS
So
budget.
that's why the letter is due in April, so we can roll out this kind of.
We have better
more
things to
iterative
spend it
process
on.
In May and June. Okay, and the other big change besides being annual is that we are making a second year of funding available. Right, if people want to.
Hopefully you all noticed we're being recorded.
12 months is a pretty short amount of time to
We'll
do
be-
that. And so that's the idea behind the second.
Recorded for
the second
posterity.
Second year of funding being available. If it's a smaller project or really more of a one-time expense, that's fine too. You can still have a 1-year project. We're gonna have standardized reports.
All right, so it's 7:01. I think we might as well get started. So, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very happy that you're here. Let me show my slides.
Zoom or phone check-ins for each grantee. with
Everyone
the
can see them?
advisory council, and then written reports.
Thumbs up, excellent.
June and December.
So ECSNJ, as you know, Episcopal Community Services of the Diocese of New Jersey.
To be dispersed.
I'm Deacon Tricia Thorne. I'm the Executive Director, and I'm joined by Janice Stapley, who's a superstar volunteer on the Grants Committee from St. Luke's Metuchen. And Meyer Pincelli is on our advisory council, and he's also on our Grants Committee. And I think we'll probably be joined by more folks as we go along. I know Ken and Sebastian's a reader, and
All right.
so we've got some good representation here.
This is gonna go.
Oh, wait, that's out of church.
Success tips.
One thing about grant writing success.
There we are. So
Am I
tonight
coming
we're
in?
going to describe our ECS
Is
grant program and how it's a way
some
that
of
we
them
follow
feel
Christ.
a little
I'm going to let you know
counterintuitive.
about changes to the ECS grant
So
process in case you've
stay with
applied
us.
before or
Remember that
have
we've
us,
gotten these
just tell you a little bit about what's
from other
different.
nonprofit
We want to share
websites,
tips
so
about grant
this
writing
isn't just our own
success,
craziness.
both
This
in
is what's
general
out there.
and for ECS, right? Because we want you to be able to write good grants to
Be
lots of
over-prepared.
funders, not just to us.
And
So,
it's sweet to
so
get to
we're
do the
kind of
letter of
weaving that in.
intent, because that lets
We'll
you
talk about the
tell
requirements for
folks in a
ECS and then
very
of course
short
answer any
way what you're
questions
thinking of
you have. And
really
if you
work
want
on
to talk
the
about your
idea
ideas
with
and time permits, we'll do
the
that too.
grant,
But we're building in some feedback
organization
into
before
the
you
process,
write
as you'll
your
hear
final grant
a little
proposal.
bit tonight.
Uh,
But just to
Very
get us
crucial is
started,
involving
let us
those you
pray.
serve in the design of your programs. It's
Compassionate
great to have
God,
an idea of
you called us
wanting
to
to help
establish
people, but
Episcopal
it's best
Community
if you talk
Services
to
of the
folk
Diocese of
who
New
you want to
Jersey.
help. And sometimes
Endow
you
us
get
with the
insight
vision
into
to
something,
balance
yes, that
charitable
would be
giving
wonderful, but
with
there's no
advocating
transportation
justice,
to get there.
so that both
Or
the
yes,
source
that
and
would be
symptoms of
wonderful, but
oppression will
it
be
won't work
overcome.
without
Through
childcare.
Jesus Christ our Lord,
Very
who
important
lives
to
and reigns
listen to
with
the
you
people
and the
you're
Holy
going to
Spirit,
serve.
one God, now and
Third,
forever. Amen.
you can't be a lone
Amen.
ranger. It's not a
Yeah.
sustainable project.
So
if there's
ECS
only
was
one
formed in
person working
2020,
on it in your
which we were just talking
your
about. It's as a
congregation.
diocesan
Wonderful if that
initiative to
person
support
is
congregations as
excited,
they
but they need
proactively address
partners. They
human
could be
needs and
community
relentlessly
partners,
work against
etc.,
both
but it
social and
can't be
racial
just one
injustice.
person who's going to try to pull this off.
This work invites us
With
to
the
walk with
reviewer
Christ
in mind,
together and make a positive impact in our
we
communities, serving as a
would love to
constant
be
reminder
able
of
to
our
say we're experts
interdependence
in everything,
and
but
of our
nobody
shared
is.
commitment.
And as soon as we get involved in some
Our
of
shared
this
commitments to
jargon,
discipleship and the
talks
baptismal
in,
covenant.
and we often find that
I like to say that at ECS, we're
readers,
working
and
to build a
all of us come
movement for
from all
gospel
different
justice in the
areas,
Diocese
don't
of New Jersey
understand all
through
the terms that are
education,
there.
advocacy,
So
fundraising,
define
grant
everything,
making, and prayer.
right, with the reviewer
So
in
in the
mind.
grant making
When
sphere,
people
we give
don't
grants to churches in our
understand,
diocese to
make them
support the
crappy.
development of new
You want to
ministries,
make your reviewer
the expansion
happy.
of existing ones that
Volunteer each.
proactively address human needs and relentlessly
Sounds
work
kind of
against both social and
straightforward, but
racial
lots of folks
injustice.
don't. And
And we
you can hear
provide
in
providing
Trisha's voice,
networking,
folks
advocacy,
haven't
and
been reading
community
the
organizing
guidelines.
support.
Read the guidelines.
So ECS in the
Next, Trish.
diocese strengthens our collective ability by raising funds
Here's
across the
where
diocese. So thank you
people
so
get
much to everyone
confused
who's
because
donated
you're
to
writing a
ECS.
grant
All of the money
to
raised for this
convince
round of
a
grants
funder
comes
that
from the
you can pull
generosity
off
of
a
parishioners,
project.
churches,
So
and
you
friends
want
of
to
the
highlight
Diocese
your
of New Jersey.
strengths, not your needs.
At
You
ECS, we
want
network
to
and make
do
connections.
something. You have
We
a
give
great
grants where
idea
most
about
needed.
how to help an
We advocate
underserved
for and we
community,
advocate for
but you have
change.
to show
I'm so
that
glad that
you
you're
can
here
pull
to
it
talk
off.
about grants tonight.
So
It should be lots of
what
fun.
strengths do you have in terms
I
of the
always get very
background
excited about
of
it.
the folks on your team? What
Something
strengths
that
do you
can kind
have
of
in
trip
terms
people up a little
of
bit is
grant where you
they have a good sense of the
share
service
costs,
part of a
etc.
grant
So
or the
highlight your
human
strengths.
service part of a grant.
Don't
And they're like, well, what's
underestimate the time it
advocacy
takes
look
to
like in a
craft a
grant? So we do
proposal.
want
We
to
get
just
a
talk a
lot
little
of
bit
them at the
about that.
last minute, and at the last
You
minute,
can read the
somebody
slide.
forms
And I also wanted to
for
share this
an
really
effort.
great definition of advocacy that was
Might
passed in a resolution
not
at
be
General
happy to get
Convention.
all the
This
proposals
idea that
in a
social
10-minute
justice
period.
advocacy is a primary ministry
So
of the church.
it
It's our
bodes well
corporate
to
public
have it done, sleep
witness
on
to the
it, look
mission
at
of
it the next
God
day,
to
and then send
restore
it
all
out.
people to the unity of God and
Demonstrate
each
you've
other in
designed
Christ.
the most cost-effective
Social
solution
justice is about
possible.
right
One
relationships among and
sticky
between
wicket
us,
we've seen
centering the voice and
before is that
experience of the
folks have a great
marginalized,
idea,
as
but
we
there
read
would
in
be
Matthew
something much
25.
cheaper that
And
could be
these are the
used to carry
relationships that
out the
have
same
been
mission,
and
and we
continue to
want
be
to use our
harmed by the
funds in the best
systemic,
way to help the
unjust
most
distribution
people.
of wealth,
So you want
opportunity, and
to run
privilege.
your idea by people who
Social justice
really you
ministry
value
includes
and see
acts
if
of
they can
mercy
think
or
of a way to
charity,
do it more
but
cheaply.
must also
Ask
include dismantling
vendors
institutions,
if they
structures,
would
and
like to
policies
donate.
that
I have a
cause
dear friend
harm
who
and
got
divide us from each other.
concrete donated
And it
for a
includes
food pantry
repairing the
from a
breach
company
by
in Staten
rebuilding
Island that
systems of
drove
justice,
over and
fairness,
poured it
and
for
equity.
them.
Isaiah 58.
Asking
I
helps.
do really love
You
that.
can't find out if you
Repairing the
don't
breach
ask.
by rebuilding
And
systems of
reading
justice,
other grants is
fairness,
a
and
great way to
equity.
do it. We have
Specific advocacy
examples up
actions that
online,
you might want to
and
think
be
about,
persistent.
or
Lots of
practices that
folks
you might
don't
want to
get funded
incorporate
the
into
first
your
time, but they might get
program,
funded the second time.
listening to the people who you intend to serve,
Now we have
to discern discern the underlying
included
causes of
more
their
guidance,
needs,
a
paying
letter of
particular
intent,
attention to
more
systemic
meetings,
racism and unjust
meetings
systems.
throughout the process,
You might
hoping
want to do some
to
research
help
and
folks get
document,
it on the first
educate and
try.
train your volunteers to do
But
this
be
work
persistent. If you have a great
by
idea
teaching
and
successful
you have a group
strategies
of
and kind
people
of
you wanna
community
help,
organizing
stay
skills.
with it.
You want to educate the community about the issues around them and also about the legislative process to address the issues. And then, what everyone thinks of as advocacy,
Guidelines.
you want to lobby decision makers for legislative and systemic change. speaking in
Okay.
favor of a particular
Do
position,
strongly
arguing
suggest
for
you
a
read the
cause,
grant
or
guidelines
pleading
and
on
call for
behalf
proposals at any
of
grant
others.
you're applying for, including this one. Key documents like the ECS grant guidelines.
I feel like this is
application
actually our whole
questions,
presentation.
Budget
Like,
template.
this is the key for
frequently asked
success for an
questions. They're
ECS grant.
great. Maybe to make
Like,
life
this
easy,
is what we
start
want
with
you to say
FAQs and
in
then
your
back up to
proposal.
the guidelines.
We want you to tell us
And
how your
all of
proposed
that is
program shows how you love God,
at a link
shows how you love your neighbor, and shows how you're going to change the world.
Newjersey.org.
Like, this is actually all you need to know to write a
Oh,
grant.
I'm gonna butt in with my
Go for
my
it.
grant lens and say that your program can change the world. We want to see that you can do it. Eligibility requirements, the
Yep.
grant amount and period.
All right.
and
So
the dates for
speaking
this
of changes, we have made quite a few changes to the
So we'll
ECS
start
grant program.
slide
For one
12.
thing, it's an
Slide
annual
12,
grant program. We used to do
eligibility.
twice a year, but now we're doing once a year. So
Okay.
it is
One thing
once
is
a
the
year.
grants can only go to a
And a
congregation
letter of
in this
intent is
diocese
required in April.
and
Not
to
it's
individuals
not
or
a huge
outside
letter. You don't have to
organizations.
describe your
Doesn't mean
entire
you
program,
can't
but you
be
do
in
have to say
partnership with
there are
another
3 things we want you to
organization.
include in your letter of intent, and you have to read the guidelines to
But
find them.
it has to be a
Like, for any
congregation
grant you're
that's
applying for,
applying
you should read the
The mission and
guidelines.
ministry
And
have
one
to
of the
be
things you have to
involved.
say in your letter of intent is that you read the guidelines. So go read the
Underserved
guidelines
and/or
and look at
marginalized
section
people
3,
in
and
our
it will tell you what
diocese
you have to
wherever
say in
they're
your letter of
located.
intent.
And
Okay.
eligibility
We've
for
also changed the
services
grant
can't
amount
be
and
determined by
period.
church membership,
We,
faith, or participation.
You know, a lot of, so the letter of
any
intent was required in
activities.
April, and then we're
So
gonna have
we're looking
optional
for a
consultations to help you
congregation
develop your
that
program
has
in May
seen
and
a
June. So you
need,
can talk to other
hopefully
people in the
talk to
diocese
folk
running similar
involved,
programs. We'll help connect you
develop
and
a
give you lots
program
of detailed
that's gonna
feedback.
help in their
We kept
community.
finding in the review process that we had
Do we have any
questions for
questions
people.
about those?
And, you know, and then by then this application was submitted. So this gives us a chance to ask you questions, and you can ask us questions, and we can really like help you
Yeah.
develop the best program
Yeah,
possible.
this is another change.
So that's
I
why
had
the
a
letter
quick
is
question,
due in
sorry.
April,
What's,
so we can roll out this kind of
I know this is gonna
more
sound
iterative
fundamental,
process
but
in May and June.
when you say
Okay.
underserved, are you saying
And the
underserved?
other big
Because
change besides
underserved
being
could
annual is that we
could be
are
used to
making a
mean like,
second year of funding available. Right? If
if you're
people
a
want to
very
launch a
wealthy,
spectacular new
young,
ministry, 12
beautiful
months is a pretty
Caucasian
short
child,
amount
but
of
you've
time to
never
do that.
ridden a horse,
And so
that
that's
would
the
be
idea
an
behind the
example of being
second
underserved,
the
right?
second
So I
period
just
of
wanted to,
funding, second year of funding being available.
yeah,
If it's a
okay,
smaller
so
project
I
or
got it.
really
Okay,
more of a
so
one-time
Paul,
expense,
let me
that's
give you one
fine
from
too,
one of
but
my
we still have a
final
one-year
grants
project.
from last year. Had to do
We're gonna have
with
standardized
training
reporting
program for
and a
folks to
standardized
get
distribution of
into
funds. It kind of used to
plumbing
depend on
at
when you
the
got your
first
paperwork in, and
rung,
that was just,
and
Okay,
that was just not working for me.
designed to
So in
oversample
March and
women
September, we're gonna have
because women
Zoom or
have been
phone check-ins for
underserved
each
and
grantee
sort
with a
of
member of the advisory
systemically
council, and then
excluded
written
from
reports
some
that
of
are
the
due
trades
in
that pay
June and
very
December.
well. So there
Right.
was a
The
class
idea, as it
developed
says in the
by a
guidelines,
congregation
grants are
that
to be
had folks
dispersed
in the
in multiple payments
congregation
each
with
year.
with the
Disbursement of funds is
credentials to
contingent
teach
upon receipt
I
and
understand.
approval of
at a
written progress
second week,
reports showing
and that was
demonstrated
designed
progress towards project
for
goals
women
and need
people
for
in the
continued
Hispanic
funding.
community
Right,
to
so
get that step up
so
into
that's,
that
it really just
that had been
streamlines and
kind of excluded.
standardizes some of the
Okay,
reporting.
thanks.
And sure, and just
All
to
right.
piggyback on that, the
And
idea
now,
too is that's
Janice is gonna go over some grant writing
life-changing for
success
them, that's
tips.
life-changing for their families.
One
right?
thing
Not
about grant writing
necessarily
success
individual.
tips,
Jennifer, did you
am
have
I
a
coming
question?
in okay? Is that
Okay,
some of them
No,
feel a little counterintuitive.
all right, well, in case anyone here has
So
applied for an
stay with
ECS
us
grant
and know that
before.
we've gotten
So
these
right
from
now, if you have
another
an open
nonprofit
ECS grant,
website.
you are
So
not
this isn't
eligible to
just
apply
our
for
own
another one
craziness.
until
This
it is
is what's
closed.
out there.
Right, and closed means
Be
that you
prepared,
submitted a final
be
report
over
and a final
prepared.
budget report,
And it's
and that
sweet
we
to
will
get to
need
do the
get
letter
ECS
of
and set
intent
the
because that
table.
lets you tell folks in a very short way
So
what you're
that's
thinking
closed.
of and really
We also
work on
said
the
if you've
idea
gotten
with
an ECS
the
grant
grant
before, you're not eligible to
organization
apply for
before
more
you
than
write
two
your
ECS
final
grants in
grant
a
proposal.
5-year period.
So
it's
very
only a preliminary
crucial is
project,
involving
so we
those
have an
you serve in
example
the
here
design
to
of
ask
your
questions.
programs.
So say that you are from
It's great to have an idea of wanting to help
and you
people,
got a
but it's
grant in
best if you
October
talk to the
2021.
folk who you want to
Maybe you
help.
got one of the very
And sometimes you get
first ECS
insight
grants in
into
October
something. Yes, that would be
2021, and
wonderful,
you
but there's
closed
no
it in November
transportation to get there.
2022.
Or
That's
yes,
gonna
that
be
would be
a great
wonderful,
final
but it
report
won't
and a
work
great
without
budget report.
childcare. Very important to listen to the people you're going to serve.
In April of
Third,
2022. So while your first grant was
you
open,
can't be a
you
lone
had to-
ranger.
had to
It's
close
not
it.
a
Well, you
sustainable
got a second
project
grant
if there's
in
only
2022.
one person who's
And
working
then you
on it
closed
in
that
your
August of
in your
2023.
congregation.
So
Wonderful
both
if
of your
that
grants are
person
closed.
is excited, but they
But
need partners. They
they
can be
haven't been
community
last 5
partners,
years.
etc. But
So
it can't be just one
St.
person who's
Swithin's
going to
can't
try to pull
apply
this off.
again until
Right,
5
with the
years
reviewer
after
in
the
mind,
first grant is closed.
we
Right?
would
So
love to
that
be
first grant
able
was
to say
closed in
we're
November of
experts in everything,
2022.
but nobody is.
So they are
And
not
as soon as
eligible
we
until
get
whatever
involved in
cycle
something, some
opens
jargon
after November of
pops in.
27.
And we often find that
Right, because we have to keep the
readers,
resources
and
flowing
all
around
of us
us.
come
We
from all
can't
different
fund the
areas,
city churches
don't
over and
understand
over.
all of the terms that are there. So
That is
define
our
everything, right, with the reviewer in mind. When
Okay.
people don't understand, it makes them crabby.
Grant
You want to
amount,
make your
it's on the
reviewer
slide, but
happy.
I like to run them in
Follow the
in
directions.
instead of
Sounds
so
kind of
often saying
straightforward, but
for
lots of folks
example.
don't. And
But
you
as
can
we
hear
said-
in
as I said
Trisha's
before,
voice,
the
folks
grant could
haven't
be
been
12
reading the
months,
guidelines.
the grant could
Read
be
the
24
guidelines.
months. The grant amount possible
Next,
for year
Trish.
one is
Yep.
$7,000 to $15,000.
You have, here's
A
where
smaller amount
people
is
get
available in
confused
year
because
two,
you're writing a grant
$5,000 to $10,000.
to convince a
It's smaller in
funder
year
that you
two
can pull
because
off a
we
project.
expect that you're
So you want to
raising,
highlight your
right, that you're
strengths,
raising
not your
money to
needs.
support the ministry
You
that you're
want
gonna
to
be
do
ongoing
something.
after
You have a
year
great
two.
idea about how to
Right.
help an
Just the
underserved
2-year project.
community, but you have to
That's
show
not
that
kinda what
you
we're
can
thinking
pull it
about for
off.
the 2-year.
So
For the 2-year
what
project.
strengths do you have in
Okay.
terms of the
If
background
it's a
of the
1-year
folk
grant,
on your
the funds will
team?
be
What strengths
dispersed
do you
with
have in
50%
terms
at the
of physical
beginning when you
plant
sign the
where you can
MOU,
um,
25%
share
upon the
costs,
approval of
etc.
the June
So
15th
highlight your
report, and
strengths.
25%
Don't
upon
underestimate the
approval of
time it
final
takes to
report.
craft a proposal. We
So we're
get a
holding
lot of
back
them
some
at the
money
last
until we
minute, and
submit
at the
the
last
final
minute,
report.
can I say form
It's a
stuff,
2-year
or
grant,
is
it's
it an
pretty
F
similar.
word?
50% when you get the
Might
signed MOU.
not be
50%
happy to
upon
get
the
all the
June 15th
proposals
report,
in a
so she
10-minute
can
period.
send the whole thing. In year
So
two, again, we're
it
thinking that you have more
bodes
outside
well to
support.
have it done,
We'll
sleep on it, look at it
disperse
the next
50%
day,
of that
and then
year
send it
two
out.
portion in
Demonstrate
December
you've
upon
designed
approval
the
of the
most
December report,
cost-effective solution
25%
possible.
after the June
One
15 report, and again,
sticky wicket we've seen
25% of the year two
before
award
is the
at
folks
the
have a
end,
great idea,
after we
but there
get
would
the
be
final
something
report.
much cheaper that
This,
could
of
be done
course,
to
is all
carry
spelled
out the
out in the
same
guidelines,
mission.
which
And
is
we
the
want
final word.
to use our
So if I
funds in the
stumble and
best
I say
way to
something
help the
wrong
most
today,
people.
the
So
final
you
words is
want
in the
to
guidelines,
run your idea
not
by people
whatever little
whose
mistake I made
opinion
in
you
the guidelines
value, and see
video.
if they can think of a way to do it
Any
more
questions about
cheaply.
that?
Ask vendors if they would like to donate.
All
I have a
right.
dear friend who
Great
got
purpose. Janice.
concrete donated Okay, for a so we're food hoping to pantry address at from a least company two in of Staten these Island that drove over and objectives. poured it for them. Asking helps. ECS grants You are can't designed find to out if you support the don't work of the ask. ministries of our And congregations in the reading other Diocese grants of is a New great way to Jersey. do Our it. grants We will fund a new have initiative, a examples brand new up project, online. And be or a persistent. Lots of significant folks don't get expansion funded the of first an time, but they existing might get funded the project. second If it's time. for an existing one, it's So expected
now
we have that they are going to included make more a really guidance, big
a
letter of difference, not intent, just
more
meetings,
on
meetings
this little
throughout the process,
function. You have to
hoping
show
to
how
help
it's
folks
really
get it
changing.
on the first try.
We're again,
But be
hoping to
persistent. If
meet
you
the
have a
needs
great
of
idea and you have a group of
underserved
people you want to help,
and marginalized
stay with it.
community, especially communities of
That's it for
color.
mine.
We love to see congregations collaborate with other
Mhm.
nonprofits
The
and
guideline.
to be encouraging
think this
advocacy
is
for
still
issues
you,
relating
Jen.
to social justice.
Okay. We do strongly suggest you read the grant guidelines and call for proposals at any grant you're applying for, including this one. Key documents like the ECS grant guidelines, application questions, budget template, the frequently asked questions, they're great. So maybe to make life easy, start with the FAQs and then back up to the guidelines. And all of that is available at a link of Diocese of New Jersey.org.
Not a whole grant proposal, just a
So
letter of intent.
we're going
And
to
we're gonna do
okay,
optional
you got it in there. We're going to review
May
4
and
sections of
June.
the grant
I've been involved
guidelines
in
now.
Several of those
You have the grant
consultations.
purpose,
They're wonderful. Sometimes people
the
have a lot of
eligibility
questions, sometimes
requirements,
they have very few.
the grant amount and
sometimes the
period,
consultants
and the
can
dates for this
give them a
cycle.
twist or a way of thinking about it
So
they
we'll
haven't
start if
before,
we are on
and help
slide
them,
12, up to slide
create a
12 for
successful project.
eligibility. the grant proposals themselves. One thing is that the grants can only go to a congregation in this diocese and not to individuals or outside organizations. That doesn't mean you can't be in partnership with another organization. We actually encourage that, but it has to be a congregation that's applying for it. The mission and ministry have to be involved among underserved and or marginalized people in our diocese, wherever they're located. And eligibility for services can't be determined by church membership, faith, or participation in any activities. So we're looking for a congregation that has seen a need, hopefully talked to folk involved, and developed a program that's going to help in their community.
The form stack is in English.
Does anybody have questions about those?
We can give you a copy of the questions in Spanish
Okay.
and Creole, so you can prepare your answers.
Let's
and then
keep
we'll,
going.
Translate that.
Okay, this is another change.
I had a quick question. Sorry. What's
That's how that works.
I know this is going to sound fundamental, but
yes,
when you say
the
underserved, are you saying
applications must be
underserved?
submitted in form
Because
stack.
underserved
Form
could
stack
be
a
used
little
to mean like
and so it's good to.
if you're a very wealthy, young, beautiful
Form
Caucasian
stack.
child, but you've
And,
never ridden a horse, that
and
could
we're
be
really
an
sorry
example of
if
being
you have a
underserved, right?
comment.
So I just wanted to
You
double.
have to convince us that that was.
Yeah,
an
yeah. Okay,
example of
so
the form
I
stack.
got it.
Okay, so Paul, let me give you one from one of my fun grants from last year. Had to do with a training program for folks to get into plumbing at the first rung, and
Okay.
it was designed to oversample for women because women have been underserved and sort of systemically excluded from some of those trades that pay very well. So there was a class developed by a congregation that had folk in the congregation with the credentials to teach to be
I
a
understand.
mortgage assistant, and that was designed
Okay, thank you very much.
for women and people in the Hispanic community to get that step up into that had been kind of excluded.
This is the very
Okay,
first
thanks.
screen
And
you see.
sure, and just to piggyback on that, the idea too is that's life-changing, right? That's life-changing for them, that's life-changing for their families, right? Not necessarily for just one individual. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I'd like to suggest you aim for 10 words or less,
No, okay.
right?
No, thank you, no.
Okay, sure.
Just to help people.
All right, well, in case anyone here
I
has
think the
applied for an
words are
ECS
key.
grant
Have a
before.
nice
So
package of
right
them.
now, if you have an open ECS grant, you are not eligible to apply for
And then we
another
wanna
one
know how
until
much
it is
you are
closed.
requesting.
Right, and closed means that you submitted a final report and a final budget report, and that we reviewed them at ECS and said that they were fine.
That is the.
So that's what closed means. We also said if you've gotten an ECS grant before, you're not eligible to have more than 2 ECS grants in a 5-year period. So I knew people were going to ask about that. So we have an example in the frequently asked questions. So say that you are from St. Swithin's in the Swamp, and you got a grant in October 2021. Yay, you got one of the very first ECS grants in October in 2021. And you closed it in November of 2022 by sending in a great final report and a great budget report. And then you applied for a different ministry in April of 2022. So while your first grant was open before we had you had the close it rule, you got a second grant in April of 22. And then you closed that grant in August of 2023. So both of your grants are closed, but they've happened within the last 5 years. So St. Swithin's can't apply again until 5 years after the first grant is closed.
You can't submit your application.
Right? So that first grant was closed in November of 2022. So they are not eligible until whatever cycle opens after November of 27.
From the diocese.
Right, because we have to keep the resources flowing around the diocese. We can't fund the same churches over and over and over again. So that is our rule about that. Okay.
We also would like to know, we'd like to see your
Grant amount of period. Sorry, the slide, I like to run them in Adobe instead of Google Slides, and so the formatting came out a little funny. But as I said before, the grant could be 12 months, the grant could be 24 months. The grant amount possible for year one is $7,000 to $15,000. And a smaller amount is available in year two, $5,000 to $10,000. It's smaller in year two because we expect that you're raising, right, that you're raising money to support the ministry because it's going to be ongoing after year two, right? If it's kind of just a 2-year project, that's not kind of what we're thinking about for the 2-year, for the 2-year funding. Okay, if it's a 1-year grant, the funds will be dispersed with 50% at the beginning when you sign the MOU, 25% upon the approval of the June 15th report, and 25% upon approval of the final report. So we're holding back some money until you submit your final report. The 2-year grant, it's pretty similar. 50% when you get the signed MOU, 50% upon the June 15th report, it's actually 25% of the whole thing. In year two, again, we're thinking that you have more outside support. We'll disperse 50% of the year two portion in December upon approval of the December report, 25% after the June 15 report, and again, 25% of the year two award at the end after we get your final report. This, of course, is all spelled out in the guidelines, which is the final word. So if I stumble and I say something wrong today, the final word is what's in the guidelines, not whatever little mistake I may have made on this video. Any questions about that?
Important here how this need was identified and the way in which
grant purpose
it addresses a need. Okay, so we're hoping to address at least 2 of these objectives. What are the goals and objectives? And these are the ECS grants are designed to support the work of the ministries of our congregations in the Diocese of New Jersey. Our grants will fund a new initiative, brand new project, or a significant expansion of an existing project. If it's for an existing one, it's expected that they are going to make a really big difference. It's not just, and we're adding on this little function. You have to show how it's really changing. We're hoping to meet the needs for underserved, can't talk, and marginalized community, especially communities of color. We love to see congregations collaborate with other nonprofits and to be encouraging advocacy for issues relating to social justice. And then we're asking for the demographics. Obviously, you're not going to have exact demographics. Dates. But what are the target groups? Okay, the letter of intent can come anytime in April. The early person gets the worm. The earlier you get it in, the earlier we can start collaborating with you and answering your question. And trying to design it so that it can come in anytime during the month of April, which is very quickly upon us. For whom English isn't a first language, again, that's not a whole grant proposal, just a letter of intent. It might be Spanish, it might. Then we're going to do optional project consultations in May and June. I've been involved in several of those consultations. They're wonderful. Sometimes people have a lot of questions. Sometimes they have very few. Sometimes the consultants can give them a twist or a way of thinking about it they haven't before, and help them create a successful project. Next slide, Chris. The grant proposals themselves are due date of September 6th. Again, don't wait until the night before because software doesn't like it when you try to load too many things at one time. I always, as an academician, told myself 2 days before the due date was the due date on my calendar and lied to myself long enough that I didn't remember it wasn't the due date, so that I wasn't getting into that last minute craziness. Then your decisions will come in October, and we require that somebody from your team can attend the online event where the grants will be announced. Because that's a team, not a lone ranger, there should be somebody who can attend for you. Plumbing one, it was very important that they had somebody in there who was licensed plumber.
You can submit the application in Spanish, English, or Haitian Creole. The form stack is in English, but we have a copy of
We're also interested
we can give
in
you a
whether
copy of the
other folk
questions
the
in
congregation are
in
gonna be
Spanish and Haitian
engaged
Creole,
in
so
the
you can
project.
prepare your answers,
Then we
and
get
then
into
we'll,
how can
translate
success
translate
be
your answers
defined
for review.
and measured. It's
So
really nice if we
that's how that
can
works.
measure that operationally
But
in a
yes,
great way.
the
We
applications
look, for
must be
example,
submitted
in the
in
training
FormStack.
project at how
FormStack
many
can
people
be a
complete
little
the
fussy.
course and how many got a
And so it's
job
good to
right
just
out of
get it
it.
in there.
One
I
of
mean,
the
earlier
things
the
that
better
they did to
on
improve
FormStack.
their grant
And
was to reach out to a bunch
we're
of
really
firms
sorry
and get
if you have a
firms to,
problem with it's in the
declare
guidelines.
that when
Applications
folks
must be
finish
received
this
in FormStack.
program,
We
they had a
cannot
job
receive them
waiting for
any
them.
other way. You cannot
So
send us a
seeing how many
PDF of your
people
answers.
ended
You
up
have to
being
submit the
hired
answers
at
in
the end
FormStack.
of that
Any
project
questions
would
about
be an
those
important
eligibility requirements or anything
important
before I
number for
take you through what the application looks
And
like in
that would be
FormStack?
one way we'd know whether our objectives.
Are
have
there
been
any
met.
requirements for FormStack on your
Generally, for each
PC,
of these, we
laptop, or
wanna,
anything?
answer
No,
the questions
it's
fully and with a lot of detail.
yeah, it's
maybe
kind of like
with at
sort of
least
like a
one
Google
paragraph,
form,
maybe
but
more for each of these
messy,
questions.
really.
Okay.
A little fussier, really.
Advocacy question and the
But
congregation
nope, and it's a web link. So the story that the link I shared earlier, actually at the very bottom of that story, there's a link to the application in FormStack.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You can pop in and look at it now. It's kind of fun.
So this is
Okay, FormStack, the joys of FormStack. So when you go in, this is the very first screen you'll see. Like we updated it this year, it looks a little snazzier. So the very first thing we want you to do is give your project a short, descriptive, and declarative title that tells us what you're about. I'd like to suggest you aim for 10 words or less, right, for the title of your project, just to help people understand what you're doing. And I always think the verbs are key. It's like I have a nice action verb in there, and
I mean, you could start in December.
describe what you're doing, and it would be great. And then we want to know how much you are requesting from ECS in total. So if you're looking for multiple year funding, how much are you asking for year one, and how much are you looking for year two?
ECS-NJ.
So that is the first
later,
one.
but again, we can't review your application.
Save and resume later. Okay, this is where FormStack gets especially fussy. You can save and resume later, which is great, and it will save your text. And when you push save, you can actually have it send you a link, so it'll go back to what you were doing, provided you keep a track of your link. But it won't save any documents you submit. You've really got to do those at the end.
And how you made the
Okay.
choices for the
We want to know, of course, things like
so
the
this is
name
the
of your
revenue
church,
side, though. We
the
wanna
address
know
of your church,
how much
which
you
county
think you
you're in,
have from
which
various
convocation
sources,
you're in.
right? If ECS
We
is
realize not
funding all
every
of the
church
costs,
currently
you can
has,
put that
you know,
here.
a full-time
To
clergy
gently
person,
suggest
so
you consider
everybody's got a
other
senior warden,
sources of
so you
funding
could,
as well.
so you definitely have to tell us your
Tricia, one of the
senior
things I was
warden, and if
thinking
you
about
have
that
a
people
clergy
often
person, we
ask
want to know
about
their
is
name and
what
email
we
too.
mean by in kind. And
The
that
asterisk,
might
the
be
red asterisk
use
means
of
that it is
your
required.
office. It might be use
That
of
you
your
have to answer
building.
those
It
questions.
might be that the congregation
Or you
is supplying
can't submit your
electricity
application without
needed for
answering those
something.
questions.
So sometimes that's not a
We'd like to know if you've
maybe
ever
people
received
that
any
haven't written
funding
grants
for
before
this
think
project.
about, but it might very well be
From the diocese, from
6
the
hours a
local
week
government,
of
from
the
anywhere else?
secretarial
And if
services
so,
of somebody in the
you know, how did
parish,
you use it and
anything
what
that
was the outcome?
parish is donating that is adding to the ability to carry
We
out the
also would
project.
like to know, we'd like to see your church annual reports for the last 2 years. And so that's
can
where
I
you can
think of it in
upload the
terms
file.
that
Choose file
we
and
would,
choose
how
file.
are we utilizing
But if
our
you
current
save and resume
resources to
later, it's not
support
going to
this
keep
new
those
project?
files for you. It only keeps the text that you filled in these
Just
boxes.
put a number on it and tell us how you got to that number.
So the backup is if you if you forget that you didn't include the files, you can email them to ECS. And believe me, when we get the applications, I check, my successor or somebody on the grant committee will check and they'll say, oh no, St. Swithin's didn't send their annual reports. And they'll follow up with you to make sure we get them.
I put in the chat earlier.
That part, the files can come in after the deadline, but actually answering the questions in FormStack has to happen by midnight on September 6th. We also, your outreach ministries may not be fully captured in your annual report. Is there something else you'd like us to know about your church and what you do in your community? And so that we have a little text box that you can fill in there to let us know.
Whatever the expense is, you tell us what it is and how you got that number.
Okay, so this is the key part
It's an
of
Excel
the
spreadsheet.
proposal.
You can put a lot more rows.
You want to do this one, Janice? I think you're on this one.
Go right ahead.
I'll take your word for it.
Any other questions?
So we want the project name, again, to be short and descriptive and have key terms that will tell somebody what your goal is and who you're serving. If you can get the goal and who you're serving in your title, you're all the way there. The executive summary is very important. Here, you're going to summarize the project within the space that is provided. You want to tell us the need you're planning to address, and very important here, how this need was identified and the way in which it addresses a need for underserved or marginalized folks. What are the goals and objectives? And these are two different things. I know we're getting into terms again. The goal is broad, and the objective we're hoping is measurable and, ooh, be still my heart, sometimes even something with a number attached to it. We are, for example, going to ask you how many people would be served. And as Trish mentioned with an earlier example, we're looking at people served for just this week, which is not a bad thing, because getting somebody served for a week gets them healthy 1 week longer, but something that's going to give them skills that are going to modify how their family lives is a bigger accomplishment. So we're looking for what can be fixed. What are we working on here? And then we're asking for the demographics. Obviously, you're not going to have exact demographics, but what are the target groups you're working for? In the example I gave, gender was a big part of it. So they were talking about trying to oversample and recruit more women for the project and trying to design it so that women were able to attend.
I understand.
It might be folks for whom English isn't a first language, depending on your neighborhood. That might be Haitian Creole, it might be Spanish, it might be, I don't know, I live near Long Branch where everything is Portuguese. So if you're working with somebody who has a language barrier to full participation, that might be a statistic that you'd want to give us. There are specific criteria that are rated by more than one reviewer when your grant proposal is reviewed by the committee. And we're trying to look at, is this a new project? Yes, no. If it's not, if it is new, tell us how it got started. Are you partnering with other organizations? And how does that work? Who's going to be in charge of the project? Who's the lead? What is the nature of the relationship between the organizations? Who's your project leader team? And we ask about qualifications. That doesn't have to be a degree. That has to be, how have they developed the skills? Maybe somebody has led the nonprofit work somewhere else. Maybe somebody has experience in teaching. In the plumbing one, it was very important that they had somebody in there who was a licensed plumber. So you want to be very clear that you have the resources. Qualifications are going to be germane depending on the project. Do this plan. We're also interested in whether other folk in the congregation are going to be engaged in the project. Then we get into how can success be defined and measured. It's really nice if we can measure that operationally in a great way. We look, for example, in the training project at how many people complete the course and how many got a job right out of it. One of the things that they did to improve their grant was to reach out to a bunch of firms and get firms to declare that when folks finish this program, they had a job waiting for them. So seeing how many people ended up being hired at the end of that project would be an important term, an important number for success. And that would be one way we'd know whether our objectives have been met. Of where they're going to try.
Generally, for each of these, you're going to want to answer each question fully and with a lot of detail, maybe with at least one paragraph, maybe more for each of these questions.
Longer because.
And the advocacy question and the congregational involvement question are both really good places to talk about your faith and your approach to the project as followers of Jesus. We really want to hear about your vision for building the kingdom.
Come on board when they hear
All
about
right.
the work that's being done in the community.
So this is so now you can see what that textbook looks like, text box looks like. And then here too, we'd like a detailed timeline, you know, month by month, at minimum month by month of what you're going to do when.
And
typically the 2024 grants are going to start in January of 25.
Busy here,
right, because we're going to spend the fall like reviewing and getting your paperwork all set up and you know, getting you ready to getting your money, getting ready to launch. So I mean, you could start in December, but why? Just start in the new year. It'll just be cleaner. So we want to see a detailed timetable that can be in Word, it can be in Excel. If you have trouble loading your files, you can email them to grants at ECS-NJ, ECS-NJ.org later. But again, we can't review your application until we have all those files.
Donating material to help us start a community garden.
Budget.
People can only say
so
no, but you
have to submit a budget. You have to submit a budget narrative describing how you got to your estimate of costs. So that was going to what Janice was saying earlier. You know, if there's an obvious solution out there that looks more cost effective, you should describe to us why it doesn't work in your context and how you made the choices for the expenses that you did. So this is the revenue side though. We want to know how much you think you're going to have from various sources, right? If ECS is funding all of the costs, you can put that here, but we would like to gently suggest you consider other sources of funding as well.
Oh, Trish, one of the things I was thinking about that people often ask about is what we mean by in kind. And that might be use of your office, it might be use of your building, it might be that the congregation is supplying electricity needed for something. So sometimes that's not a way of thinking that people that haven't written grants before think about, but it might very well be 6 hours a week of the secretarial services of somebody in the parish, anything that the parish is donating. That is adding to the ability to carry out the project.
Sorry. Sexton's work.
I stopped sharing. So can I think of it in terms that how are we utilizing our current resources to support this new project?
For your presentation.
Yes.
This has been great.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. And just put a number on it
Tricia.
and tell us how you got to that
Janice.
number.
Very informative. Very
Really
much.
was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great
So that's revenue, and then
if you have other
yep.
questions,
So here we are in
you can
expenses, and these are
email
just some
us,
of the
and
kinds
then,
of expenses. Sorry,
and then the
I
idea
hope it's
really
not
is
terribly
after you
hard
get
to
the
read.
letter of
But there's a
intent,
budget
you can start
template. There is a budget
conversation
template
about
on the
what
website.
you're
I
doing.
said I put in the chat earlier, so you can actually just download this in Excel. You know, are you looking for staff funding? Are you looking for staff support? Are you looking for
Really
equipment? Are you
time and
looking for
energy for
program
everybody to
expenses? You know, if
assist
it's an
us through this
educational
process
program,
and
do you
move
need to
through
buy
all
pencils
this.
and books?
I'm very much
You
appreciative.
know, do you need to
time
make
and energy
flyers
that
to
it takes
advertise it in the
put it together and
community?
instruct
Do you
us.
need to make, T-shirts,
Thank
like
you.
whatever the expense is, you tell us what it is and how you got that number.
Trisha's getting towards
And again,
the
we
end
have
of
this section towards
her
the bottom for
tenure.
in-kind expenses.
This
It's an
week,
Excel
Jana,
spreadsheet. You can
so
put a lot more rows
I'd
in
just
for the
like to,
in-kind
add my
expenses.
thanks for everything you've done
Go right ahead.
for ECS and everything else you've done.
Any other questions
for
about
this
the budget?
diocese has been tremendous effort, and I know we're going to miss you. And I know the Diocese of Rhode Island is very lucky. Sure.
You're here.
Okay, and we want to make sure that whoever submits the grant has the authority to do so.
Just agreeing.
So, that's why we need someone we need the names of the